the grand commemoration of the 65th birth anniversary of the late Diana, Princess of Wales. Instead of making a radiant appearance to honor their grandmother, as pressured by the Buckingham Palace PR advisory faction, the two young princes, George and Louis, were completely erased from the list by a sharp, broken stroke of blue ink from Princess Catherine. This decisive action sparked a fierce internal war to conceal the darkest adversity within the royal palace. Behind-the-scenes sources reveal that behind this decision to bar the media lay a ruthless crime. A sophisticatedly disguised hidden camera had just been discovered right inside the royal library, planted by an insider colluding with the paparazzi. 13-year-old Prince George was forced to shed his innocence, becoming a resilient living shield to protect his younger brother Louis from toxic whispers at school. Which instinctive and tearful act of protection by Prince George left all of Britain weeping on Diana's birthday? Which powerful traitor masquerading as a media advisor will be publicly exposed by Prince William before the family? And will the Wales family's fortress of love be strong enough to defeat the cruelty of the sophisticated manipulation network inside the palace? The atmosphere inside the living room of Adelaide Cottage that Sunday afternoon was thick and heavy, so suffocating that even a sigh could choke the room. The weak weekend sunlight filtered through the antique glass windows, casting long, lonely shadows across the wooden floor. Completely unlike stale royal protocols, where every serious crisis was hidden, wrapped in layers of velvet and silk, and met with absolute silence in front of the children, Prince William and Princess Catherine made an unprecedented decision. They chose a direct dialogue, looking straight into their children's eyes, to deliver the truth about the princess's health before toxic rumors outside could spin wild scenarios. Prince George, 13 years old, sat motionless on the leather armchair, his hands clasped so tightly together that his knuckles turned white. Beside him, 8-year-old Prince Louis looked at his mother in bewilderment, his wide eyes unable to grasp the full weight of the words their father had just uttered. Catherine tried to keep her voice from trembling, but the lines of exhaustion etched clearly on her elegant face could not hide the harsh reality. She looked at the two children, her eyes filled with an immense yet painful maternal love of a mother, forcing herself to battle adversity. Her vulnerability at this moment came not only from the cruel illness, but also from the ruthless scrutiny of the world outside the palace walls. The moment their private conversation ended, the room's door burst open. Buckingham Palace PR advisors walked in with cold expressions, carrying the suffocating pressure of the exploding online public opinion waves outside. They did not look at the breakdown of the woman on the chair. They only looked at reports, engagement metrics, and public anxiety. The proposal they put forward was so ruthless, it made William jump to his feet. They wanted George and Louis to appear immediately in upcoming major national holidays, especially the series of events commemorating the birth of Princess Diana, using the children's innocent image to soothe the crowd's frenzied curiosity. The head of the media advisory team stepped forward, placing a list of major events on the table. The names of George and Louis were bolded in central positions, accompanied by a dense schedule of appearances before hundreds of camera lenses. The advisor looked straight at Catherine, his tone devoid of warmth, asserting that the presence of the two princes was the only way to salvage the family's image right now. He viewed the children's fear and the mother's exhaustion merely as chess pieces to be arranged at will on the public media chessboard. William stood protectively in front of his wife, his eyes flashing with a fiery rage, but the advisory faction showed no intention of backing down. They continuously cited evidence of online outrage and how the royal family's honor was in grave danger if the Wales family continued to choose silence. For these manipulators, there was no room for compassion or family affection. All they needed was a perfect public show, regardless of the potential psychological panic inflicted on the two children. Catherine stared intently at the list on the table. Her lips pressed tight, her fingers gripped the armrest tightly to regain composure. A terrifyingly long silence enveloped the room. Then, without a word, she stood up, walked toward the desk, and decisively picked up the blue ink pen. With a swift, forceful motion, and without a shred of hesitation, Catherine crossed George and Louis's names right off the attendance list. The bold, sharp blue ink cut across the paper like a fierce declaration of war, leaving a decisive, broken trail of ink. She raised her gaze as sharp as a knife, looking straight at the PR advisory lead. The resolve of a mother protecting her children completely crushed the arrogant confidence of the man standing opposite her. This drastic action instantly caused the PR advisors' faces to change color. The head of the advisory group clenched his fists, anger visibly flaring in his eyes as he saw his plan completely shattered by the ailing woman. As the advisory group retreated, the leader turned back to glare resentfully at the crossed-out list, a dark intention brewing in his mind. He knew that if he could not bring the two princes into the spotlight publicly, he would find another way to exploit their pain, initiating the next sequence of stealthy crimes. The Lambrook School campus in the following days could no longer maintain its original peace. Although the school tried to establish a closed environment, dark hands from the Buckingham Palace PR advisory faction managed to smuggle digital devices containing unverified online articles inside. Malicious whispers and gossip about Princess Catherine's health and her absence from the Diana Memorial began to surface in corridor corners and on sports fields. This toxic information quickly created an invisible, yet incredibly cruel, psychological pressure, weighing heavily on the shoulders of the two Prince brothers. Young Prince Louis was the most visibly hurt by these covert psychological attacks. The boy, originally playful, hyperactive, and always full of energy, now became unusually quiet. Whenever he walked out of the classroom, Louis no longer ran and played with his friends, but always walked close to his older brother. His tiny hands constantly clutched the hem or sleeve of George's shirt, as if it were the only lifeline keeping him afloat in a stormy sea. Louis's eyes always held panic. He constantly looked around, seeking physical reassurance from his brother whenever he heard hushed whispers from afar. Witnessing his younger brother surrounded by the toxicity of the outside world, George quickly shed the innocence of a 13-year-old child to step into the role of a silent guardian. On the Lambrook School grounds, George became a literal living shield for his brother. Seeing Louis standing awkwardly in the corridor in his school uniform, emotionally shaken, George proactively approached, gently helping his brother adjust his disheveled school tie, lightly patting his shoulder with a reassuring gesture. George's gaze at this moment was no longer that of a teenager, but the steadfastness of an older brother determined to use his entire body to shield his family. George always kept Louis within sight inside the safe zone maintained by the royal security team stationed around the school. Whenever passing through crowded playground areas where students gathered to gossip, George would step ahead, using his shoulders to shield his younger brother from prying eyes. He constantly spun little stories talking about Louis's favorite topics, like toy models or football matches, to distract him, determined not to let toxic whispers or online articles infiltrate his little brother's mind. It was a silent but extremely tense battle that a 13-year-old prince had to shoulder by himself on the school front line. However, the villain's crimes did not stop at rumors. The PR advisory faction, through covert connections and insatiable greed, committed a deeply despicable act. They bribed an insider within the school to assist a covert paparazzi network in accessing the edges of the campus. Their objective was clear: to capture at all costs the moment Louis was panicking and crying from psychological pressure, as proof that the Wales family was collapsing. One afternoon, as the two brothers were walking through the backyard, George suddenly spotted a long-range camera lens peeking out from behind the security fence, trying to capture Louis's anxious face. This stealthy act of secret filming trampled directly on his child's innocence, turning family pain into a lucrative commodity for the dark media. George immediately pulled his brother inside the building, completely blocking the paparazzo's view, his chest heaving with rage at the cruelty of those pulling the strings behind the palace walls. Immediately upon receiving reports from George and the security team about the paparazzo's presence on school grounds, the Lambrook School administration collaborated to set up a solid media firewall to protect the two princes. A temporary digital device ban was enacted school-wide, strictly enforced for both students and staff, to completely prevent the distribution or reception of unverified social media information. All standard pathways within the school were closely monitored, and an entirely new transit route was mapped out to pick up the two brothers every day. Every afternoon, instead of picking up the two brothers at the main gate in front of the crowd, as before, the family's SUV was ordered to move through a private path behind the administration building. This was an isolated area deep within the campus and well hidden, completely out of sight from beyond the barriers. However, George did not fully trust these superficial measures. With a maturity and sharpness that grew tremendously after the family crises, the young prince began conducting his own undercover investigation, meticulously observing the smallest changes around their transit area. George noticed that despite the school's strict ban, suspicious glances from a few service staff members at the administration building were always directed toward the SUV whenever they prepared to leave. The boy silently memorized the work schedules, the faces of the suspects, and the way they deliberately lingered near the private pathway right at the pickup hour. George understood that the school's media firewall might be solid against outsiders, but would become useless if an insider aided the Buckingham Palace PR advisory faction by providing the transit schedule. He kept it from Louis to avoid scaring him, but remained highly alert whenever passing through this area. Every day upon stepping into the SUV, George proactively pulled down all the sunblinds, thoroughly checking every corner of the vehicle cabin to ensure no listening or tracking devices were stealthily planted. He coordinated closely with the head of the loyal security team, traveling with them, reporting detailed observations of locations and individuals displaying suspicious behavior on the school grounds. George's persistence and sharp mind helped the security team narrow down the suspects trying to sell schedule information to external forces. This war for privacy transformed the 13-year-old prince into a vital defensive link, a resilient young detective safeguarding his brother's peace. The vigilance of the forces of good finally yielded concrete results. During a routine security check before the car rolled out, the security team discovered a miniature tracking device secretly attached beneath the SUV's license plate. This was tangible proof that the opposing faction was utilizing technological means to track the two children, hoping to find a loophole to launch a media assault. Upon receiving the report, Prince William immediately ordered the security team to leave the device untouched, to avoid spooking the enemy, but to use technical equipment to jam and spoof the tracking signal at critical times. The forces of good began gathering evidence of this unauthorized intrusion, gradually turning the tables against those hiding in the palace shadows. At Anmer Hall, the family's peaceful country home in Norfolk, Prince William decided to erect an absolute security fortress entirely isolated from the surveillance and manipulation of the Buckingham Palace PR advisory faction. Recognizing that the villain's plot was growing increasingly frantic and willing to trample over all ethical boundaries to achieve their goals, William took a firm stance, asserting the ultimate authority of a father and a successor. He completely rejected all requests and commands from the palace regarding making his children appear in public. To ensure absolute independence, William paid out of his own family pocket for all the new defensive measures, resolutely refusing to use any resources or personnel tied to the Buckingham Palace media management system to eliminate all risks of covert espionage. An emergency construction site was set up around the Anmer Hall grounds under the strict supervision of the trusted security team. A cohort of loyal workers was mobilized to build solid, high, soundproof fences out of special materials, preventing any sound from inside activities from leaking out. Concurrently, a dense grove of mature, broad-leaved trees was planted along the entire perimeter of the estate, forming a massive natural green wall that completely blocked the paparazzi's view from surrounding hills or high-altitude aerial devices. Anmer Hall was transformed into an impregnable oasis where Princess Catherine could peacefully recuperate and the princes could play without fear of being disturbed by malicious prying lenses. In addition to increasing physical defenses at the mansion, the family's transit route between London and Norfolk was drastically and securely altered. Every luxury vehicle carrying familiar royal license plates, used daily, was held back in the palace garage. Instead, the family switched to using an untraceable fleet ordinary cars with standard colors and models bearing no royal markings. The entire fleet was equipped with the most cutting-edge anti-tracking systems. Whenever the fleet moved, these devices emitted waves to jam all surrounding satellite positioning systems and broadcast stations, rendering the tracking of their journey entirely impossible for the opposing faction's covert paparazzi network. The success of this security fortress relied heavily on the absolute solidarity in information security from the local community in Norfolk. The rural residents, who adored the simplicity and sincerity of William's family and deeply respected Princess Catherine, voluntarily formed a solid outer defense network. They proactively rejected all offers to buy information for thousands of pounds from reporters and even directly notified the prince's security team upon spotting any suspicious strangers carrying cameras lingering around the area. The tight-knit unity between the Wales family and the locals created a rock-solid human shield, shattering all infiltration plots by the villains. In the peaceful and absolutely safe space of the Anmer Hall fortress, the new generation of royal brotherhood between George and Louis grew tighter than ever in the face of adversity. Petty childhood disagreements and everyday squabbles gave way to a powerful instinctive bond between two children sharing the same worry for their mother. Louis leaned on his older brother George with absolute trust, complying with all his protective instructions without a single question or pout. Meanwhile, George gradually shaped the distinct demeanor of a silent guardian. She's constantly staying by his brother's side, reading books, and playing sports within the fortress's safe zone, turning peaceful weekend country breaks into a place of healing and spiritual strength for both. George's remarkable maturity served as the greatest emotional anchor for his parents during this fierce phase, preparing for the decisive countermoves against the antagonists. The plan to counter the ruthless attacks of the Buckingham Palace PR advisory faction shifted to Windsor Castle, where a special project was being rushed to completion. It was the restoration of the children's library dedicated to Prince George and Prince Louis. Prince William's initial purpose was entirely pure: to create an absolutely safe, peaceful country learning space so the two brothers could study while remaining close to their parents throughout Princess Catherine's treatment for her critical illness. This place was expected to be the final spiritual fortress, isolated from the toxic whispers of social media and the prying eyes of the dark media. However, for the head of the Buckingham Palace PR advisory team, who was frantically searching for ways to exploit the princess's images in exchange for million-dollar deals with news hunting syndicates, this restoration project was a golden opportunity. He knew that the defense system at Anmer Hall was too formidable, and the family's transit convoy was equipped with tracking countermeasures that were far too sophisticated. Therefore, the Windsor Library was his only opening. Exploiting his authority to inspect the construction site, the PR leader secretly planted an inside worker to stealthily access the ancient bookshelves before the functional rooms were security sealed. The opposing faction's dirty crime was executed with extreme sophistication. A high-tech miniature hidden camera and audio recording device was perfectly disguised inside the spine of a rare ancient book, placed right on the central bookshelf where the two princes frequently sat to study. The villains wanted to capture every single panic-stricken tear from Louis, every helpless instruction from William, and even Catherine's physical breakdowns when she visited her children. For them, these whispered reports and inside secret footage were the ultimate weapons to manipulate online public opinion, trampling on the Wales family's honor to solidify the PR faction's influence at the palace. But the villains underestimated the family's silent guardian. On a late afternoon, as George walked into the library with his father to check the placement of the new desks, the 13-year-old prince displayed astonishingly sharp perception. While skimming through the ancient bookshelf, George noticed a tiny scratch on the rare book's spine, inconsistent with its usual strict preservation status. Without uttering a word or making any move to raise the enemy's suspicion, George pretended to bend down to look for a storybook, skillfully sliding his personal phone out to snap a close-up of the serial number and a tiny technical marking hidden inside the metal part of the book's spine. The concrete piece of evidence, the MacGuffin of the entire war, had been discovered. When William brought the image of this serial number to trusted security agents for an independent check, the analysis of the device's origin pointed directly to a single address, the personal account of the head of the Buckingham Palace PR advisory team. The naked truth exposed left William utterly infuriated. The man who constantly spoke of royal honor, the man who forced the two children to step before the lenses on Diana's birthday to protect the monarchy, was the exact old fox who planted a hidden camera to sell out his family's flesh and blood. He had not only betrayed their trust, but also directly violated the safety of psychologically vulnerable children. Instead of immediately making a scene or bringing the matter to official authorities, which could allow the media to spin further toxic narratives, William and George decided to spring a perfect trap using their own actual power. They used signal jamming technology to completely isolate the transmission from the hidden camera, making the PR advisor believe the device had suffered a technical glitch. Concurrently, through the internal communication system that the leader was monitoring, William intentionally leaked a piece of fake information that next Friday night, Catherine would secretly come to the Windsor Library to have a tearful conversation with her two children before entering a new round of treatment. The trap was set, just waiting for the old fox to walk right into it himself. On Friday night, the entire grounds of Windsor Castle sank into a terrifyingly desolate silence. The space inside the children's library was pitch black, with only faint slivers of moonlight piercing through the towering glass windows, casting pale streaks of light across the ancient wooden floor. The room's stillness held a suffocating pressure, like the calm right before a raging storm hits. The forces of good had completely taken control of the battlefield, turning what was once the villain's infiltration target into a high-level royal intelligence stage. Precisely at midnight, a soft click of a door latch broke the silence. The secret door behind the bookshelf slowly creaked open, and a hooded dark figure quietly stepped inside. It was none other than the head of the Buckingham Palace PR advisory team. Having received the fake information from William, he had completely fallen into the trap. Fearing that his hidden camera, losing its signal, would miss Princess Catherine's million-dollar moment, and driven by insatiable greed for the massive payouts from the underground paparazzi network, he recklessly broke into the library in the dark of night to inspect and retrieve the memory card containing the secretly filmed data before it was too late. The dark figure crept forward, stepping skillfully to avoid making a sound on the wooden floor. He approached the central bookshelf, his eyes flashing with utter triumph in the dark as he saw the disguised ancient book sitting in its exact spot. He extended a hand, trembling with suspense, pulled the book down, and prepared to use a specialized tool to pry the memory card out. For him, this moment was the pinnacle of success, the moment he could hold the entire Wales family in his palm and manipulate the media to his whim. But just as the advisor's finger touched the memory card, a sudden shift overturned the entire chessboard. The library's entire system of high-power floodlights blazed to life simultaneously, the powerful glare blinding the PR leader, causing him to stagger dazed and completely disoriented. He raised his hands to shield his face, panting heavily, his heart racing with terror. As his eyes gradually adjusted to the light, the villain almost collapsed upon seeing the figures standing right in front of him. Prince William stood tall in the center of the room, with the commanding aura of a powerful monarch, his gaze as cold as ice fixed directly on the traitor. Beside him, Prince George stood with crossed arms, the 13-year-old's face showing no trace of fear, replaced instead by a steadfast, ultimate contempt for the man before him. In William's hands was a tablet live streaming the entire video of the PR leader's break-in, rummaging, and data theft captured by the Wales family's own hidden security camera system. The PR advisor turned pale as a ghost, the ancient book slipping from his hands and hitting the floor with a thud, exposing the miniature hidden camera. He tried to stammer out an excuse, claiming he was merely conducting a royal security check ahead of Diana's birth anniversary event. But William gave him no chance to utter lies. He tossed a dossier containing copies of the advisor's overseas offshore bank accounts onto the table, clear proof of the millions of dollars transferred after every leak of Catherine and the children's internal information. Faced with irrefutable ironclad evidence and the prince's absolute authority, the villain completely shattered, sinking to the floor in ultimate humiliation and helplessness. The following morning, the atmosphere at Windsor Castle held absolutely no mercy. Instead of holding a closed meeting to settle the matter internally or issuing a peaceful press release, as the PR faction usually did to cover up scandals, Prince William decided to execute the most cruel and public punishment. In the main hall of the castle, witnessed by all senior members of the royal family and the loyal royal staff, the truth about the head of the PR advisory team was laid bare in raw daylight. The video recording the advisor's stealthy criminal act on Friday night was projected publicly on a large screen. Furious whispers erupted from the attendees. The villain was escorted out into the center of the hall, his face pale, his head bowed under hundreds of contemptuous stares. William stepped forward, and in a resounding voice, carrying ultimate authority, he declared the stripping of all royal titles, the erasure of the advisor's name from all personnel systems, and the permanent revocation of security passes to all palaces in the United Kingdom. He was transformed into an outcast sinner, an unwashable stain. The public humiliation reached a crescendo when William ordered the royal guards to step forward, confiscate all his personal belongings, and use actual power to immediately expel the advisor from the castle grounds. He was pushed through the grand gates of Windsor before the eyes and furious boos of the local community, the very people who had formed the shield with George to protect the two princes all this time. The villain lost everything: honor, wealth, status, and even the right to live within the aristocratic world. He was exiled in utter isolation and deep shame, a cruel yet fitting punishment for one who dared trample on maternal love and children's pain. A brilliant victory belonged to the forces of good. Justice was restored through wits and the inviolable love of family. True peace returned to the Anmer Hall mansion in Norfolk. Beneath the dense, soundproof groves and the secure, defensive fortress built out of the family's own pocket, Princess Catherine could finally smile serenely. Her face regained its rosy color under the morning sun, her spirits lifted, knowing that from now on, her children were absolutely shielded from the toxic lenses of the outside world. The new generation of brotherhood between the two princes had truly been forged through the storm and became tighter than ever. In the Windsor Children's Library, now completely swept clean of espionage devices, George stood proudly beside his younger brother Louis. He gently adjusted his brother's school tie, his eyes filled with the pride of a silent guardian. Louis looked at his brother with absolute trust. The two brothers held hands and walked to their study desks under the warm countryside light, completely free and safe. As the Wales family's untraceable SUV rolled out of the Anmer Hall gates to take the princes back to school, from a distance on the opposite hill, another long-range camera lens slowly rolled down from the window of an unfamiliar car. Though the underground paparazzi network and the dark PR forces of Buckingham Palace had lost a powerful insider, their greed and stalking of the throne had never ceased. A new rift, another silent threat, was beginning to form in the shadows, waiting for the next slip-up from the next generation of the British royal family. Can Prince George maintain his role as the silent guardian forever? Adversity has forged a resilient 13-year-old prince, but in the face of increasingly sophisticated divisive plots in the future, will the instinctive brotherhood between George and Louis be strong enough to withstand an entire monarchy full of lies? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.